On Tuesday night, they were officially eliminated from playoff contention, thus ending, how many years was it? About 5?
Ooh, I think it was longer than that. It was
6 or 7?
I think it was at least 6.
6 or 7, because in 2012 is when they made the move to get Parisi and Suter in that summer. So yeah, from 13 to 18, so yeah, about 6 seasons, somewhere around there.
Yeah, but it did. It came to an end. We won. We did really well against Winnipeg. We won 5-1, I believe it was. And as I looked at work, at the end of the second period, the Wild led Winnipeg, I believe, was 3-1, and at the end of the first period, Edmonton led Colorado 2-0. So I said, hey, maybe the Wild still do have a chance. And then as I left work, I pulled it up again. It was the final of the Wild game at 5-1, and I said, oh, cool. Scrolled down, and it was 4-2. Colorado was up over Edmonton at the end of the second. Colorado scored 2 more in the third and scored 6 straight to eliminate the Wild from the playoffs very, very aggressively. And like I said, the Wild put themselves in a position with all these losing streaks and, bad runs that we're in a position where we need to rely on other teams to help us get into the playoffs. You want to be the team that's in control of your own destiny, saying, if we win a couple more games, we're in the playoffs. And that's what Colorado's got to do right now. All they got to do is get 1 more point from their last 2 games, and they're in the playoffs. And that's the position you want to be in if if you have to be in one of those wild card chasing positions. It didn't end up being the Wild's year. There was a lot that went wrong, and I think just moving forward, focusing on the young talent we have on the roster now, and maybe trying to get some more talent through the draft, work our young players up. Because I've liked what I've seen from the young players. Obviously, Donato was a very good young bright spot. Fiala started to come into his own. I've liked guys like Jordan Greenway and Joel Eriksson on this roster as well. Luke Cunning's an up-and-coming good player. So maybe we just need to give, I think, these players a little bit more time to develop and play with each other. There was a lot of roster movement in the middle of the season. And, players that aren't used to playing on the same line, it doesn't really work. When you have to change lines a bunch throughout the season, people lose chemistry with their line mates, because they're not used to the tendencies of the people that are playing on their same line now. So hopefully giving them a whole offseason to learn their teammates and learn their tendencies will help them to advance and be back in the playoffs next season.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Where do the Wild go from here? Because it's not like the Wild have a blue... I mean, Donato's been good for us, no doubt, but they really don't have a guy who's like, that guy is... I mean, Parisi is the quote-unquote face of the franchise,
yeah.
But in the same way Joe Mauer kind of was. Like, they're good players, they get the job done, but they're a shell of their former selves. Who is the actual big-name player, big-time player maybe even, that the Wild have? Because they really don't have one right now, and they really don't... They don't have a big-time prospect coming up. Their farm system, even coming into this year, and they made a couple moves to shore it up a little bit, but their farm system still is middle of the road at best. Mm-hmm. You'd have to say in the NHL.
Yeah.
So where do they go from here? Because, I mean, they can't just say, oh, well, we just missed the playoffs. Let's try and sneak back in on that, one of the wild card spots. What do they got to do?
I think, like I said, just kind of rely on the next generation of talent that you do have, because you see it. There's a couple lines of players that are very young and very talented, and I think we were kind of seeing the Niederreiter, and not that Granlund isn't a great player, and Coyle and them. They just started to get, I want to say, stale, and they weren't really working for this unit. Maybe a change of scenery is the best thing they needed, and getting in a new, younger lineup will hopefully bring in more success going into the future. And I think for now, our poster boy still is Zach Parise. Mikhail Granlund will get on all the, Mikko Koivu will get on all the, Fox Sports North promotional ads and stuff like that, because he's been around, and
Donato probably will sneak his way in now.
And that's what I'm saying. Donato will be, I think, the next face of this franchise if he can continue to play at the level he has at the tail end of this season. And for the Wild, it might be a good reset moment and say, hey, something clearly wasn't working this season. We missed the playoffs for the first time in a while. We need to, not implode, but rebuild and get more pieces in here, because we've got solid, talented guys, and it's not like they're, guys that we just brought up at the tail end of the NCAA season and said, hey, play a couple of games for us, and you had like 3 goals in one, in your 3 games, so that's pretty good. These are players that have been playing in the NHL for a year or two now, that are still young and they've established themselves that they can play. You know, Joel Eriksson-Ek's been on the Wild for 3 or 4 years now. Jordan Greenway and Ryan Donato were on the Olympic team, and Luke Cunning's been playing for us at a decent level for a couple of years. So we've got young talent, and I think our defensive core, we still have good players. And you miss guys over the course of the season, like, you know, when Parisi goes down with injury, Koivu went down with injury, and guys like Parisi and Koivu and Suter and maybe even Matt Dumba are guys that they might not put up these superstar, you know, lines of stats, but, you know, I've heard all over, like, Lakers fans have said, you know, Lonzo, he's better than you guys give him credit for, because he might not show up in the box score for those of you that don't watch the game, but he's clearly making the team better, even if they're not great still when Lonzo's out there. He makes the bad team look better when he's on the court, even though he might not be getting tons of rebounds or points or assists. Something about him just makes the offense flow better. And I think that's kind of what you see with Parisi is, you know, you might be disappointed with Parisi because he doesn't have this, you know, he just got, I think, his second 60-point season since coming to the Wild. But for some reason, the Wild have been playing better with Parisi in their lineup. Our offense seems to flow better with him, as it did on Tuesday night with him scoring, I believe, a couple of goals in that game. So I think it's just basically saying rebuild, get pieces that are going to work, and hopefully some of these players that we, you know, acquired, like Kevin Fiala, like Ryan Donato, these guys, they played well this year for us, and hopefully they can continue to do that going forward.
I think the Wild have kind of run out of tradable guys, though. I think that's the problem. Is we were able to trade Granlund, we were able to trade Coyle, but Koivu and some of these other guys, they got full no trade clauses. There's no way you're going to get rid of them. And I understand what you're saying is to, you know, restock the system. The only way so far, realistically, is going to be the draft, because it's like last year, and people were expecting Paul Fenn to come in and make some trades and maybe shake this thing up, but the problem was you couldn't, because a lot of the players had no trade clauses, and they still do, and then you kind of just traded off some of the other parts, and they did a good job. Like, trading Coyle for Donato is a huge steal, is a massive steal for the Wild, and I'm not saying that
I think Zucker is another guy that we were just about to pull the trigger on the trade. We couldn't find the right deal for him before the deadline, but the trade was going to go through. It just ran out of time. I wouldn't mind seeing Zucker go. He's a guy that's been sort of a fan favorite. You know, the fans love him.
His wife is on K-Fan down in the cities a lot.
I think he's from, you know, Minnesota. I believe he played at the University of Minnesota.
I want to say that. Yeah, I want to say yes.
I want to say he did, but I've just not seen it from him. I believe I want to say sometimes too fast. And, you know, if people are listening to this, and they'll probably give me a lot of heat for it, but I think he's too fast for his own good. A lot of times I see him make his move, and by that time he's already in the goaltender's mouth and can't shoot his shot or pass the goal. I just haven't, you know, loved what I've seen from Zucker. I think he's a tradable piece that we could end up, you know, moving for some younger talent or some higher draft picks. Because, you know, at this point you want to say, all right, we don't have enough talent to compete for a title right now. So we're going to get rid of, you know, Zucker's a good player. I'm not going to lie. I just think he's a very tradable asset. And it's an asset that'll get us some, you know, should get us some decent young talent for it. So give him to a contender for some young talent that they're not really using right now. We'll develop them into hopefully good NHL players, and that starts the rebuild.
Yeah, and I think the problem is for the Wild is, even if they trade Zucker, it's still not going to, the assets you're going to get in that trade probably aren't going to be enough to really fix your team, so you're going to have to fix it through the draft. And again, I'm leaning towards the side of blowing the thing up, but it's impossible to blow it up.
Well, I'm not even saying, I don't think this should be something that we can fix and be back in title contention next season.
It's kind of like the Vikings and the offensive line, where it's like, yeah, it's a problem, everybody knows it, but we can't just fix it with one move or one draft pick, one signing, one trade. It's going to take some time.
Exactly, and that's what I think you have to look at with the Wild right now. It's not going to be a hard reset. You know, it's not going to be a Timberwolves-esque, you know, blow it up. We've got Kevin Love, but nothing else. We're winning 16 games a year. We're still going to be competitive in games. We probably won't, you know, be competitive in terms of playoff series. We might get to the playoffs next year. We'll probably be a wild card team again if we do. But it's just going to take time for our younger talent that, if we're trading Zucker, we better be trading him for either draft picks or younger talent on a team like a Granlund for Fiala in a draft pick trade.
I see what you're saying with that, though. But the thing is, if they try and get back to the playoffs quickly and then they lose out on the chance for a better draft pick to kind of redo the system, I don't know. That's the one. And I agree. I think I want the Wild to be competitive. I want them to get to the playoffs. I think that they're a talented team enough to get into the playoffs. But
that's the thing. I think we have too much talent to say we're going to just tank and be.
They're stuck in the middle. They're stuck in, and we've talked about that before. They're stuck in kind of that mediocrity of we're talented enough to compete, but we're not talented enough to get the cup. So what do you do? And Major League Baseball, you kind of see this trend where teams find themselves in the middle and they blow it up. The Arizona Diamondbacks are a good example of that. They were good enough to compete, but not good enough for a World Series, and they decided, you know what, we're going to take about 2 steps back to go 3 forward. So we are going to do a blow-up, and I think that, and again, I'm not saying the Wild should, and I'm not saying that's the only way they can do it. I'm just saying it's really hard if the people want to move on from the Parisi and the Suter era of the Wild. Something's gonna have to change, and you can't trade them.
Yeah, you're not getting rid of those two, and it's going to be difficult. I understand what you're saying. You want to get higher draft picks, but I just think. This team, like I said, is too talented to say they're going to be one of the worst teams in the league. They're going to be next season's LA, where they're 20 points behind the playoffs. I don't think we could be that bad if we wanted to.
Plus, it's tough to watch a team tank. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
I've been watching the Twins since 2000, or from way before 2011. But from watching the Twins from 2011 on, it's a rebuild, but it's tough to watch.
Yeah, and being I'll say casual fan of the Timberwolves. I watch them as much as I can, follow the news, watch the box scores and stuff. But it's been difficult to see, and that's why I was so excited. We got a superstar now, yada yada. But for the Wild, it's going to be a tough road ahead because you don't really know what they're going to do. If we decide we want to tank and blow it up, then only really time will tell. We literally just got, kicked out of the playoffs 2 days ago.